Be nice to start off with. As you know, Sol, I'm a bit of a fan of this class.
Yes, indeed. And generally, this is... It seems weird to say about a Hunter deck, which has classically been so aggressive and early game focused. Generally, topping out a high main was about the best they did, but it was all about that early game. But now, Hunter is a deck that kind of has the late game locked up, and you're really just hoping you're able to get through those early games turns. And Napoleon is going to do that pretty well here. He has the perfect Fiery Bat, Flame Juggler, Animal Companion curve.
Yeah, he has a really good start, but I'm really interested to see how the Camels potentially come into this matchup, because although amazing versus control decks, that was interesting. But although I'll finish my point for a second. Although amazing versus control decks, as they don't normally run a lot of one-offs, versus a deck like Zoo that has some of the most powerful one-drops in the game, it can be very disastrous to just give your opponent a minion as well.
So, Turn 1 Forbidden Ritual. I played against this on ladder the other day. I queued into a Zoo who played Turn 1 Forbidden Ritual against me. And I wasn't entirely sure what I thought about it. After the initial shock of, that's weird, I kind of thought about whether that play was going to be correct or not. So I tweeted about it, asked, guys, is this ever correct? People who have played more Zoo than me in the new format, what do you think? The general consensus is that it isn't, because generally you'd be looking to have Abusive Sergeant or something in your opening hand that you'd use to trade it up with, but in which case you'd just play the Abusive Sergeant on turn 1 anyway. This is kind of a niche situation because he doesn't have a remaining curve, he just has that power overwhelming, so it looked like he was trying to leverage that 1-1 to trade up on the next turn. Yeah,
definitely. I definitely don't know what I think about it, especially since Unleash the Hounds is something we've seen being cut a little bit, so it's not like, Forbidden Ritual can be really strong to just refill the board, and there's much less fear of the Knife Juggler Unleashed that we used to see in every single Hunter deck.
Yeah, I just looked away for a second there. Did the Elic draw the high main? That looks like what's happened here.
So Napoleon was very, very happy that high main versus Leroy came out. So he also has the knowledge that at the moment, Leroy isn't in the hand of Deerjason.
So this is a play when you're playing against Hunter that kind of puts the fear of God into you. You know that you need significant board dominance by turn 6 at this point now, because you know that high main is ready and waiting in hand. And that means that if you do not have board control by turn 6, that additional threat of the high main coming down is going to be crushing.
Yeah, and I think that's why Napoleon just went for the Animal Companion as well. He could have just Deadly Shot, because, the Councilman is a very scary minion to leave on the board. He could have Deadly Shot and got rid of it, but he wanted just more minions and keep control of the board. And again, this follow-up turn, he gets to play the Fiery Bat, kill off the Imp Gang Boss without spawning any tokens is huge, and Napoleon is just saying, just you wait till turn 6 in this game.
This game's wait till I have 6 mana. Yeah, Desert Camel is drawn here, but probably not going to have too big of an impact on this game. It is a risky card to play against Zoo. I think making a serious point and not just memeing on Jackie Chan about Desert Camel, it actually makes a little bit of sense right now, because one of the big drawbacks of Desert Camel previously was Zombie Chow. Yep. You played Desert Camel, you ripped your opponent's Zombie Chow out of their deck for them, suddenly you haven't gained that much of an advantage. Zombie Chow is of course gone from standard format, so most decks are not playing powerful one-drops in their lists at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, other than like Zoo, Shaman maybe as well, and other Hunters, there just aren't that many decks that are even playing one-drops, and some other Hunters aren't even playing one-drops at all. They start the curve at 2 with like Doomsayers or something as well.
So there is Forbidden Ritual number 2 from Deerjason, desperately trying to get some board presence here. Napoleon draws the Injured Valdir, which is a card you pretty much never want to draw with this deck, but as I said, his curve looks like it bypasses that Desert Camel at this point. Looks like Tiger into high main is just the line here. That power overwhelming looks incredibly juicy for a 1-1 into a 5-5, but unfortunately the kitty is hidden and we cannot interact with it.
Yeah, the stealth actually really come into play, and one of the big benefits of this minion is, as you said, the opponent just can't interact with it, so it's almost a guaranteed play next turn. You can get there some work done. And as a base sort of 5-5, it's actually really powerful. I was wondering whether, because he had the Leok down, whether he could have gone with Huge Toe Desert Camel just to fill up the board. The opponent only gets a 1-drop, and the Leok can almost guaranteed kill a 1-drop except for Voidwalker on its own anyway, so you could sacrifice that to leverage a wider board, but he did actually just go for the target.
Yep, and this is the first turn where Jason's really been able to make one of those big Zoo tempo plays, use his combat tricks to create an advantage on the board with the trades. Has got himself back into it a little bit, but he knew what the play was going to be that turn. He saw it off the Elic, so he was expecting the high main. Now he has to find a way to deal with it. Does have the power overwhelming to start doing that.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting actually, because he can just Dark Eye and Dwarf and potentially trade into the Stranglethorn Tiger.
My shield for
and then He's going for the Argus. I thought he was going to trade and just say, I have my Councilman, you have your high main, you know, and play a bit of a game of chicken, because Councilman can actually, you know, like get a bit out of control. But as I can tell by the look on your face, that, my friend, is Call of the Wild. Almost, well, perfectly in time for turn 8.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, drawing it on turn 7 is honestly almost the best turn to draw it, because you can then plan for it on turn 8. If you just rip it on turn 8, you can play to that out a lot, but having it on turn 7 means that you can set up your board and just say, hey, I'm just going to play my entire hand. Guess what my one remaining card is, my friend?
Having it on turn 7 means you can just have 7 minions on board. Let him trade a few. You know what? Make space for my Call of the Wild. I dare you.
Picks up the second power overwhelming. This is a big turn coming back from the Zoo. We saw a huge turn from the Hunter with the full board flood, but that enables the 0-mana Sea Giant. The double 0-mana Sea Giant, excuse me.
The free giant, of course.
The double free giant, as Savitz was coining earlier
I was completely going to say stole from Savitz.
Yeah, credit where credit's due to the pun master, Yanni Savitz-Mikkonen. Double power overwhelming doesn't really enable any good trades on this board right now, unless he wants to send the 1-1 into the Camel, which it looks like isn't something he wants to do. So it looks like just Dark Iron Dwarf is potentially going to come down here, and he's going to bank on that double power overwhelming to try and pick up lethal on the following turn.
Yeah, this is it's actually a hell of a lot. It's not often you see 2 free Sea Giants go down and have the 2 POs in hand as well. So that's actually potentially a lot of damage. Harrison Jones not gonna do too much, but I'm pretty sure no matter what he drew this turn, it would not matter, as Call of the Wild is almost always the play on turn 8. And that actually looks
18?
like a lot of damage.
3, 6, 9, 13, 18 damage, yep. So a little bit off. Good for Deerjason that he was able to do a little bit of clearing that turn, or else he could have been in trouble if there was one additional minion in play that would have represented lethal. But he does get that taunt up against one of the Sea Giants, which now prevents the lethal coming back the other way from the double power overwhelming.
Yeah, and we see Napoleon there almost become the Zoo player himself and do all the Zoo trades of just keeping everything just about alive to cause havoc for Deerjason here. And as you said, Misha causing also some havoc as it stops that. I mean, that is a lot of burst in hand, actually.
Yep, interesting. Deerjason has chosen to omit the Soulfire from his deck. Most people who are bringing a Leroy Jackson build... Oh, my God!
Was that on purpose?
The virus is spreading. No, that was an accident.
God.
The Leroy Jenkins build, my apologies, of Zoo are favoring that one Soulfire at least. Soulfire would have actually been a lethal draw on that turn. He could have played his 2 power overwhelmings first to buff up his Sea Giant damage, and then Soulfired the taunt out of the way. But he's chosen to cut the Soulfire for more consistent minions. He has a Bran in here, which is something you don't always see these days, so he didn't have any outs that turn for lethal as far as I can see it.
He would have definitely liked to defend with Argus though, and Animal Companion could very easily give him lethal here, and it doesn't.
That is the only one that did not give him lethal, as I'm sure Napoleon is now screaming to himself internally. But he is going to have to evaluate the state of the board right now, because he can just put his opponent on hero power lethal next turn if he would like to, but that does leave you at some serious risk on the board.
Yeah, these trades are really awkward as well, because nothing particularly lined up too well, always, you know, overcommitting damage, so a little bit unfortunate there for Napoleon, but he's still in a very strong position. As we can see, there's only 3 power overwhelmings in hand. Well, that would be nice if Misha wasn't there.
It certainly would, but I just want to point out I like the play from Napoleon a lot. It represents very, very good discipline. I think a lot of people may have been tempted to go more all in there, try and push a lot more damage, but you have that hero power and you have the board advantage right now. So as you have inevitability as a hunter, essentially. It's something that a lot of classes don't get. As long as you just keep getting to press that hero power every turn, you will get there eventually, as long as you don't die yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And with Zoo as well, you can actually just win regardless of all that by just not letting them ever have a board, as then you're only really bothered about the burst potential of Leroy. And at 22 health, he's very safe, as well as having Misha on board as the taunt. So I completely agree. It was a really strong play and just sets up almost guaranteed lethal next turn anyway, because there's still a few cards he could draw. We've not seen quick shots or kill commands, I believe, yeah.
So Deerjason is in a rather awkward spot here. If he life taps, he's dead to the board. There's 7 plus the hero power, which would be 9. So I'm interested into... You saw him very, very carefully sort of looking up to the upper right corners of his eyes, considering his outs. So he must have thought of a card that he specifically wanted to life tap into there. I can't particularly see what that would have been.
With a second defender of
Could he have
Argus
played Leroy Jenkins that turn for lethal? He could have done, right? He had enough mana?
Yeah.
So thinking like he could have waited one turn, and then the turn after he potentially has 2 draws for Leroy to tap with the power overwhelmings. But he considered his outs. He decided he just wanted to tap there, go for the play. Didn't pick it up. Knife Juggler, I think, was the draw. Not good enough, and very well played. Camel Hunter looking actually very impressive. Sorry.
Yeah, I think one of the strongest parts of that game for Napoleon was the fact that Elic pulled the high main, because that just straight away tells your opponent, I have high main on 6. You need to be prepared for this, and if you're not, it's just going to be too powerful and just win the game.
Yeah,
so